without further ado, Lance Walker.
Yay!
Well, with that introduction, I want to say thank you to Roland Foster for having me and putting all this together. I also want to say thank you for the many hours of open and honest dialogue that we've had at the barbershop. It's greatly appreciated, and you're a blessing.
Me too.
You're a blessing to me also. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for coming. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here this afternoon. So thank you all for coming out. I would like to open with a word of prayer. Mine. So, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time that we're able to come together and just dialogue and share ideas and lean into one another, Lord. That we would hear, Father God. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That we would be more apt to hear than to speak, and that whatever's said in here, that it would be said out of love, and that it would be received in love. There's some heavy topics, and we just ask that you would go before us and prepare the way that would be pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
All right, well, wow. A little more about myself. I'm not from here originally. I'm from Pittsburgh. My wife is from this area. That's how I ended up here. I've been here for 17 years. I'm the owner and operator of Walker's Barbershop. Coming up on my 17th year of being in business here in Chambersburg. And in my shop, we get into some really deep dialogue and discussion because my clientele is 40% black, 40% white, and 20% other, with all the age ranges and the different whatever spectrum of society or our community that you could put together. It's there. We're a great cross section of what Chambersburg looks like, even what the United States looks like. And so the barbershop has always been a place of an institution and a place of exchange of ideas, dialogue, and I make sure that everything is open for discussion and on the table for discussion, be that politics, religion, sex, sports, entertainment. All of it is open as long as we can do it in a family-friendly environment where everyone is heard. I foster that type of environment. And so with that, it's actually opened up plenty of doors for me to have speaking engagements like this at Penn State Mont Alto, at the board, the Patient Family Advisory Council, at the hospital, and quite a few other spaces that have opened doors. I call this my shoes. So if you look at the packet that you have there is a pair of blue shoes. There are my shoes. I bought them. I'm giving them to you, so you can literally step in my shoes. I would like you to put those on as a symbol. If anybody needs help, I'll come around and help you. I know my wife sometimes has to push me behind so I can reach and pull my socks up. So if anyone needs help, and this is so while you have these shoes on, I just want you to lean into the dialogue and the conversation.
Did you get it?
Does anyone else need help?
I took an extra large.
I got you. I'm here. Give me extra large, huh? You good?
You did it big enough.
You can do it.
You're big enough.
Need help, Rosina? Just couldn't get it apart.
Turkey bag.
Is that how it says? Like the bag at the supermarket.
Yeah, right.
You lift your thumb and you can
Got it.
twist them and pull them.
There you go.
And this is just a symbol of walking into and entering into the space that I occupy. With the way things are going on right now in the United States, I think that more dialogue is needed than less. And I think that we are, we've gathered in camps and in silos and in echo chambers. And sometimes we need to hear an outside voice to see a different perspective. And I'll give you a prime example before we even get into this. Because I think we're creatures of habit a lot of times, and so we'll go with the flow of what our habits where our habits have taken us. So before I got here, I'm embarrassed to say this, I was at Coyle Library.
Oh, wow.
Creature of habit. I don't do a whole lot of business on this end of town. I'm usually on that end of town. And so all week long I'm thinking, okay, the library, Tuesday, going to be the library Tuesday. I hop in the car and I actually told my cameraman, I said, Coyle Library, 3 o'clock. I'm going to get there early, want to see the lay of the land, get everything set up. And when we got there's nothing on the books, and I thought, oh man, then I pulled and opened up my email, and I thought, Grove Library. So we packed everything up and hustled and came here, and good thing we didn't get caught up too much in the school traffic and everything, but I'm saying all that to say that me being operating as a creature of habit, I just hopped in the vehicle and headed that direction. And I think sometimes our habits take us in directions that we're not even aware of. And I'll give you a prime example right there. That wasn't a real sneeze, but we automatically said, bless you. We're creatures of habit. Why do we do that? You know what I mean? And if we don't ask ourselves these questions, and we don't do the introspective work to ask ourselves, you know, why do we do this? Does anybody know why we say God bless you after you sneeze?
We were raised properly.
Brought up that way.
You stop breathing.
We were raised properly. Well, they used to think that your spirit would leave your body, from a sneeze, and so they heard God bless you, so it would, gather your spirit and keep you intact, and you wouldn't, die, go to hell. I don't know, but we do that now. That's become a part of our social norm. I just wanted to show my perspective on how I see things, especially on the racial aspect of things. I think in the United States we've got such a huge chasm with race that as a Christian, I know that God is not pleased with. And I believe that we are to be ambassadors of reconciliation for those of us who claim Christ. And that's one of the reasons why I love doing these talks, to try and help bring a nuance to conversations and bring reconciliation. I know growing up the way that I did, and I just give you some of my history. Growing up, I remember being in grade school, we were taught about a certain group of African American figures. And it didn't go any further. And it was usually 5 of them. The 5 were usually Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, George Washington Carver, Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman. I would ask you with the little, if everybody has a pencil or pen, pull out the little Post-it note. We're just going to do a quick little quiz. Does anybody have a pen? No? Okay. Does anybody need a pen? Anybody need a pen? No? No? You need one?
I do,
Okay.
thank you.
I know you weren't expecting. Does anybody else need a pen? We're expecting to be quizzed.
Sharing.
But this won't take but a second. We'll do a whole minute. Outside of those 5 African American historical figures, outside of Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, George Washington Carver,
Yeah.
Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, and I'm missing one. I said 5. Did I get all 5 of them?
Yes, you know.
I'm sorry, okay, outside of, I'm still back at the Coyle Library, forgive me. Outside of those 5 African American historical figures, Name me 5 more African American historical figures.
Historical or?
Historical.
Historical.
Historical figure. Name me 5 more African American historical figures.
That means they're not alive now, or?
Alive or not, just yeah, historical figures. I'm going back some from Martin Luther King Jr. on back.
You got me.
And I got a timer on it, so we'll do that for a minute.
Carter Woodson.
Excellent one. It's the reason why we're doing what we're this month, right?
That's exactly right.
Yes, yes. We got 19 seconds.
W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois.
Yes, yes. Don't give them no answers. Don't give them answers. Ah, yes.
Keep it coming, Neil.
Yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. How many people got five African American historical figures? How many people got 5? No. How many have gotten 4? 4. How many got 3? 3. How many, just like,
Well, I've got generalizations because I like some of the Civil War soldiers that I was watching on TV last night, and I know they had some very interesting black
Buffalo soldiers.
I don't remember their
Yeah.
names.
Anyone else? Just shout them out. Just shout them out.
Muskegon Flyers.
Yes, the Tuskegee area.
Oh,
Tuskegee
but I
area.
don't know their names. I
Yeah.
don't know their.
Yeah.
Barack Obama.
Huh?
Barack Obama. Colin Powell.
Yeah, I'm good. Historical me, I guess he is in history. But I said from Martin Luther King Jr.
Well, how far back historical?
No, that's what I said, Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, long story short, I do this exercise because representation matters. And African Americans have been in this country, dare I say, built this country literally off of blood, sweat, and tears. But we can't even name 5 other African American historical figures. Whether or not we're aware of that until you enter into that, it's like, wow, okay, wait a minute. They've been here all this time. And it'll get harder if I ask you to name 5. If you name maybe some athletes, Jesse Owens or whatever, or Nat King Cole, we've always been in a role to entertain. But name me 5, Sammy Davis Jr., yes. But if I ask you to name me 5 African American academia, we'd be even worse off. But it gets better, or worse. If I were to ask you to name me 5 Native Americans who contributed outside of Sacagawea, Sitting Bull, or if I asked you to name me 5 Asian Americans who contributed to this nation. And so representation matters. And the reason why I said that is, these are the people that I learned about, but there were so many more, whether it's Ella Baker or the other, I'm drawing a blank. But long story short, these stories have not been told, and they are just as much American history as all of the other history. Now, this is what I learned. This is why I'm asking you to put the shoes on and walk in my shoes. This is what I learned in grade school. I get to junior high, and in junior high, we had history, and then we had black history. History was required. Black history was an elective. So if you already kind of didn't tell me my history, then I get into junior high school. Now you told me, well, this is real history, Lance, and you have to have that. The black history, now you can take it or leave it. So you may have knocked me down another peg or 2. Now these are the scars that I bear, because whenever I look back on it, I thought, I was angry at my school system. When I got older and I look back, I was ticked. And I thought, how dare they do this to a child? How dare we do this to a child, that we don't teach them and show them that you are just as important. Your people's accomplishments were just as important and just as American as anyone else's who have built this nation. And these are the things that go through my mind whenever I realize these are some of the scars that I carry, that as I walk through life, I noticed that oral history was passed down to me from my grandfather. Now, my parents were, my mother was raised in Georgia, partially moved up to Pittsburgh. And I remember the stories of her literally riding the back of the bus. I remember the stories of my grandfather walking down a dirt road and hearing a car coming and hiding off in the bushes, because back then nobody black owned a car, and you had no idea who was coming. So I need to make myself real scarce until this car goes by, and I can get back out on the road and finish my journey. My aunt, so my mother was born and raised in Georgia, moved here up to Pittsburgh, and then went back visiting. She was a young girl, so she got used to riding towards the front of the bus in Pittsburgh. So when she went back, she went to sit closer to the front. Then I get into high school. I graduated in '86. I graduated from Chesapeake Christian Academy. We won the basketball playoffs when we found out we were going to the championships. This is right outside of Pittsburgh. So this is there were 6 of my friends. One of them was white. We go into a diner right on the outskirts of Pittsburgh to celebrate the victory that we were going on for the championship. And all of us were black except for one guy, Mikey. And so we walk into this diner, and the lady comes out of the back, and the way it was set up, it looked like, I think maybe their house was on the other door upstairs. And so there's the guy was standing in the doorway with the apron. I remember this vividly. He was standing in the doorway with the apron on, and he's got his arms folded, and he's leaning up against the door jamb. The wife comes out, and she comes and stands in front of us, but she stands directly in front of Mikey. And she goes, "Can I help you?" So we're all looking up at the menu, and we're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have it." She said, "Can I help you?" So we're all looking like, yeah, we're all gonna get something. And then she leaned into Mikey, she said, "No, can I help you?" And we were like, "Oh, wow." No, we're not. I was in high school, and I didn't know enough to be offended or pushed back or even how to deal with something like that. So we laughed and walked out. These are the things that have shaped my memory. Now, I don't want anybody to think that I'm complaining or that I'm ungrateful for the nation that I live in. I'm saying this because these are the things that a lot of people of color will go through, that if you don't have a close relationship with them, that these are the scars that they carry, that they're more than likely not going to share these type of deep hurts. Because if I share it with you, and this is, and I've had this plenty of times, "Lance, are you sure that's what happened?" Like, well, maybe he was having a bad day. And so those things reopen those wounds. So now I'm not credible. Now it's not believable what I'm saying. And so this is why I do these kind of talks and have these kind of talks, because I think there's value to this. I think that there is just to hear those perspectives really gets you to walk in someone else's shoes and say, "Oh wow, okay, that's horrible." You fast forward to today, and there are still things that I see that go on. I look at the population, and in the African American population in the United States, we make up 12 point something, more round up to say 13%. The white Caucasian population, I believe, is in the 70s, 72, somewhere like that. The likelihood of me receiving some sort of prejudice, bigotry, or racism is going to be higher than what it would be coming in your direction. So it's a little bit harder, I think, for people to see it, because it's like, what, that happened? I had two people in my barbershop last month and the month before, 2 separate occasions, and we were talking about some stuff, and I mentioned the KKK. And they said, do they still exist? And I thought, wow. Two grown-ups, two different, one was a female, one was a male. And I said, you do realize that we have white supremacist groups that meet out here in Gettysburg. Every year there's a rally there, 20 minutes from where I live. That is, to me, that's sobering. That I almost feel like I have to have my head on a swivel. Because if I'm only 12% of the population, 13% of the population, and the other 72%, because of my life's experience, I heard my grandfather's stories, I heard my mother's stories, I've got my own stories, and I've seen my children who were biracial go through some things, even being biracial. And so now it's like, my head is on a swivel because I'm not sure what that person said. Were they being slick? Was it a little, bigoted? Was it, and so I have to constantly read a room. And sometimes it may be things that aren't intentional, but because, like the sneeze, this is just the mode that we're used to moving in and operating in. And so I just come to share this story with you all because, like I said, I think there's great value in this. And to bring understanding, sometimes we have to peel the scab off of the wound to put some salve on it and to bring healing. And I'm going to go back into some other stuff, but from all the stuff that we've talked about, there are any questions, because I welcome questions, and I'm one person. I do not speak for the whole of the Black community, but there is a common thread in what I've experienced and the things that I go through, and what I'm sure other people of color go through. And so, before I jump back into some of these other things, are there any questions, any comments? How are you feeling? And I know these are uncomfortable conversations, and so I'm trying to give space for that so we can kind of process a little bit. If anybody wants to ask a question or say, we don't have to agree. We don't have to. We can agree to disagree, but let's stay present. Let's stay in the moment, in the conversation, so we can affect positive change. Anybody?
Well, I've had some experience with, of course, institutional racism. I believe it does exist, just like the KKK. But in my hometown, which is Waynesboro, there was a barber, as a matter of fact. His name was Dutch. What's his last name? Doesn't matter. But he was a great community guy. Went to the hospital. He, was a very compassionate man, well loved by the whole community. And there was an article about him, and I happened to post it on Facebook. And about an hour later, I got a private message from a Black friend of mine. She said, "Mike, let me tell you my experience with Dutch." She said, "I remember my mom taking me and my little brothers to his barbershop, and we walked in and we sat down, and Dutch turned out the lights and walked out the door." Yeah, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw it through her eyes.
Yeah.
Well, I never would have known that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Thank God for those stories, for her to even feel.
Yeah, she trusted me.
Yes. Wow. And thank you for whatever it is that you displayed to her, that she felt comfortable enough to wear that as a badge of honor, really, because those are some hurtful things, and to put that back out there, and then are you sure that's what happened? Or like whoa, okay, yeah.
Well, where did you grow up in Pittsburgh?
On the outskirts, New Kensington, in the projects. I was raised in the projects.
Because I grew up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
Okay, yes,
Yeah,
it's not
so,
too
because
far.
you go to Pittsburgh and you always stayed away from the Hill District.
Oh, yes, yeah, I used to work.
You never went to the Hill.
There's an episode of Cops filmed in the Hill District, so yeah, the Hill District was pretty
Yeah.
bad. Back in the day, it was a flourishing community with art and musicians, and where Dizzy Gillespie and a lot of artists like that would go and play, but it's turned into
I can remember going into Pittsburgh, and it was the Black community. When I grew up in Johnstown, Prospect, which was a flourishing community, was all Black.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of like neighborhoods, just stayed that way. You had,
Mm.
and then the
Yes.
other, at West End was
Yes.
the Italians, and then you had the
Mhm.
Polish, and you
Yeah,
had the
Polish
Russians,
Jews.
and,
Yes.
and so it was all very segregated.
Yes.
I mean.
And it's still like that somewhat in Pittsburgh right now. They just had, I don't know if anybody watches, not PBS, what's the other channel? PNC, it's PNC,
PCN.
PC, thank you, yes, PC, I'm a little dyslexic. They actually had a special on that, and they showed, because of the steel mills, and all of the immigrants and the people who would come in, because back then, you needed that to survive, the different types of food that you ate. So everybody, so you've got Shadyside, which is more the Jewish community, you've got Morningside, which is more the Italian community, Polish Hills, and all of them gathered because they spoke a common language, they ate, common foods and everything else. So all of those neighborhoods were close knit. Every last one of them had their own grocery store, their own restaurants and everything else. It was a really good, I'm sure they may have it on there. And some of the streets, it's a little, off topic a little bit here, but some of the streets that are in Pittsburgh really aren't streets. They were actually the staircases that they built into the side of the hill and the mountain for them to come, because they lived up on the mountain, but the steel mills were down by the river. And so they actually took these long staircases, you can see them snaking and winding all the way to the top of the hill and back. And so they were actually named streets. So sometimes if you go look in your GPS, you're thinking, okay, turn left on, no, you're gonna go down the stairwell, you're gonna take that left.
Yeah.
But,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, Pittsburgh was, you just think of any small, western Pennsylvania town
Mhm.
was very neighborhood oriented.
Yes, yeah.
It's just the way it was.
Yeah, yeah. And even, there was a lot of, so in my hometown, there was a lot of mafia because of the steel mills, which brought along the unions, which brought along, there was just a lot of different things. And so I remember going downtown, and my mother would go past this one, it was quite a few clothing stores that were operated and owned by Mafia. You didn't see a whole lot of commerce going on in there, but they somehow stayed in business. And we would walk past the one there was, to get to the clothing store, you had to go past this bar. And as a little kid, I was always fascinated because they had games in there. And they were like blatant, they would kick the door open, like put a wedge in the door, have the front door kicked open, and I wanted to see what these games were about. And there were slot machines. And, when you figure gambling was just made legal here in Pennsylvania, I don't know, it was, a few years back, but and my mother said, if you need to stay on that side of the street, you're not allowed on this side of the street. So we had those type of things. But to get back into the fray of things, so whenever you hear stories of minorities, I would ask that you lean into them. Try not to discount what you hear, for as outrageous as it may sound. Lean into it, because I will tell you this, and a lot of times I use the racism that parallels along kind of misogyny and the way men treat women in the United States. And Mr. Foster and I have had some conversations on this. So, and it is a cultural thing, right? I mean, you turn on the TV, sex sells, right? You open up an ad. I'm a big fan of pugilistic sports, boxing, UFC, and all that stuff. And so I had this conversation with some a gentleman in my barbershop, and I said, why is it that we're? I have to ask myself these questions, and I think we need to do introspective work. I said, why is it that we're okay with the ring girl when she comes out with the card and she's got on a bikini? Well, I said, no. I said, let's be honest, as men, we got this, there's no women in here. Let's talk. I said, had that been a man out there with some real tight shorts on, but it's okay when a woman does that. Or it's okay until it's your daughter that's up there and you're ready to fight the whole arena because you're ready to, hey, what are you looking at? So we've got these double standards. It's okay for me to look and ogle and to objectify and everything else. And that is, as a male in this country, I think if you don't deal with those issues, wow, you're an anomaly. because it's ever in our faces. You know, every commercial, it's a, you know, half naked woman, not everyone, but I remember the one commercial I was looking at and I thought, wow, there's a woman, she's got on the man's shirt and the shirt's coming to here and she's up and doing her one of her, but then it was a coffee commercial. And I was thinking, my coffee doesn't look anything like that in the morning. But, you know, but they know that it's going to sell. My son and I had a discussion, and I'm going to get back to the race stuff, but my son and I had a discussion on this about the, even down to women's pay, sports-wise and everything else. And so he was saying, Dad, he said it's funny that for all of the guys who say, oh, I look at it, I watch it because the reason why I don't watch the women's is because the competition isn't stiff enough. You know, the men is where, I mean, there's a lot more in basketball. There's more ways to take in school where they're slamming the ball, or they're shooting threes, and they're doing this at the third. And he said, so that to them, they were saying it was about athleticism. But then you look at women's volleyball. If it's about athleticism, then there will be a lot more observers in women's volleyball. I mean, in men's volleyball. But there are way more observers in women's volleyball. Why do you think that is? I'm just curious. I'm just curious. And when you look at the outfits that they wear. So, and I'm saying that because these are the societal norms that we're swimming in that I don't think we take notice of unless we're doing the introspective work and say, okay, this is happening. This is going on. We do objectify women. They've been telling us for how long? But have we listened? As a male, I can say, no, we haven't. Or if we have, we haven't done a really good job listening. We may have listened and then turned around and moved on. I think the same is true whenever it comes down to racism. I hear a lot of times people say, oh, they keep complaining. Oh, my man, are they saying this again? Well, Lance, isn't that over with? I had an incident a couple years ago at the Y. I work out at the Y. Now, I just turned 55 years old. Just like a woman, you know when you're being objectified. When you go into a space, when you walk into, you know, and there are quite a few men there, if not quite a few, you know when a guy is like, okay, this is a third double take that this guy's done. Or there's a gratuitous compliment that's like, hey, you want to look me in my eyes here? You want to look me dead in my eyes when you talk to me? Women know that feel when they come, and a single word doesn't have to be said. You know when there's something, you know, going on. The same is true because you've had to develop those techniques to read body language, to see what's going on, because your safety literally could, you know, depend on it, right? The same is true whenever you experience enough bigotry and racism. You learn to see through things. You learn to pick stuff out. I've got friends of mine who, I have friends of mine who won't let their kids date a person of color. And they tell me they're not racist. But if the reason you won't let them date is because of their skin tone, you've got a little deeper soul searching to do than to just say, I'm not racist. I will raise my hand and tell everybody in here, I traffic in racism. I traffic in misogyny. I'm human. That is part of being human. And I think until we give ourselves that space to be human and know that I do these things, I think the problem lies in not doing the work, recognizing it, and then dealing with it. There's nothing wrong with those feelings because that's part of survival. If you've been bit by a dog, okay, well, the next dog that comes in the room, hey, somebody get that thing. And rightfully so, you've been bitten. And until you find out that, oh wow, this dog will lick you to death before he'll ever bite you. And so, unless we're doing that work of saying, hey, what's going on here? Was I out of line? You know, are these things still going on? And I'll open up again one more time for a talk, and I don't want to go overstate what the time that I have allotted. Are there any other questions?
Just a comment, I see you talk about double standards, whether it's misogyny or whatever. You talked at the beginning of your talk about people, sort of having tribes or having whatever. It's like some things are forgiven or allowed. That's okay because they believe this. So we'll forgive that. You know what I mean? Seems like a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm more apt to do, if I have a relationship with Mr. Foster, I'm gonna extend some,
He thinks I'm old.
You
I have a relationship with Roland, I'm sorry. He's been on me, the way I was raised, he's been on me from day one. He said, it's Roland, and I keep calling him Mr. Foster, but that's just my upbringing, and I mean, it's out of respect.
I was like, yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, that's how I grew up.
That's how I was raised too, and I feel a little uncomfortable calling my elders by their first name, but yeah, so that he gets on me about that and continues, but I'm learning. But I do think we tend to flock and go into our little silos and echo chambers.
But just, that's an example of why it's hard to change people. You're used to doing something you keep doing.
Wow. Yes, I can take my own advice.
There are several, this is an observation I found I had, several aspects of doing the wrong thing. One is you don't really know what's right and wrong. Another one is fear of not going along with the crowd.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, I mean, this Dutch person, this barber in Waynesboro, quite possible, he just didn't want the flack that he would get if he served that
Person of color, yes.
car.
Yeah. And that's the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but that's a lot of who we are too. It's just fear of standing out and having to stand up, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough, it takes courage, and it takes a real sense of right and wrong, and a lot of times we don't have that.
Yeah. I think too, it's practice too. Because sometimes it means, okay, I'm just gonna walk away. I'm not even gonna engage in this whatever conversation or whatever's going on. Sometimes it's a well, why do you say that? And now you have to give, now that person has to give explanation as to why they said or feel the way that they do. Then maybe you'll get enlightened on, oh, okay, all right, I get it now. You know, this happened. And then there's times to push back, say, hey, wait a minute, no, that's wrong, that's off. That you're off on that. And I think learning how to enter into those spaces, knowing which tool to use, you know, we can either end up escalating things or making things worse. But it takes courage. Definitely takes courage.